Hey, what's up everyone? It's Brian here from Exact IT Solutions. Welcome to another video on our YouTube channel here where we discuss all things cybersecurity and a little bit of tech. Today we're going to get into an update on the SolarWinds hack. It's been several days since I've provided an update on that. I just wanted to let things develop here for a couple of days so I could bring everyone some interesting and new information rather than rehash all the stuff I probably already talked about in my 3 other videos about this. And then we're going to talk about existing or ongoing attacks that either happened in the last month or so. I'm going to give everyone an update on those. And then talk about some attacks that are going on right now. But before we jump into today's content, I want to thank everyone. We did hit 1,000 subs the other day, and we are beyond excited that we hit that milestone. It was only a few short months ago that we barely had even 100 subscribers. So to see the channel grow at this pace is really awesome. We thank all of you because without you, that would not be possible. And then we want to build content that you guys want to see and you want to hear me and my team talk about. So in the comments below this video or any video on our channel, ask a question or throw a comment in. Let us know what you want to know more about, and we'd be happy to turn that into a video for you if the topic is something that we have expertise on. So just a reminder to everyone, we do not still get paid for this channel. We don't do the Patreon thing, and we don't annoy you with ads inside of our content. The only fee that we ask for you to consume this great content we're putting out is you hit that like button and consider subscribing to our channel. If you're entertained in any way, if you like anything we have to say, if we put any knowledge in your head that you didn't have before you started watching our videos, just give us a thumbs up. Let us know we're doing a good job, and let us know that we're helping you out in your journey to understand this cybersecurity situation, mystification, whatever you want to call it, that we're in. So without further ado, let's jump into today's content. All right, so quick update here. I don't want to spend too much time on it. There's 3 other videos on this channel about the SolarWinds attack. Obviously, I indicated in those videos that we were going to see a lot of companies coming out and giving indication that they were either affected or used the SolarWinds Orion product, which has, if you don't know, has had a backdoor built into it by somebody, and that backdoor allowed criminal hackers or state-sponsored hackers, however you want to dub them, allowed them to get into other companies' networks that were using this Orion platform. So we know that these companies that I have up on the screen here, Intel, NVIDIA, Cisco, there's some others like Belkin and a few others that I know of that were infected with infected during the SolarWinds hack. And what we're seeing as a result of the SolarWinds backdoor is these hackers, not only in obviously the private industry, but also in our government's networks, the U.S. government that is, the criminal hackers decided that they were going to take advantage of the access that they had. They didn't necessarily execute the hack or the hacking event that a lot of these companies experience. Wasn't necessarily the SolarWinds backdoor. The backdoor just gave these hackers access to these networks. They used other exploits and other tools to actually carry out hacks against certain companies. And one of the big ones that we're seeing that they like to do, and it's one that I talked about probably in September or so in one of the videos on the channel here, where I talked about hackers using a tool called VMWare. And if you're not familiar with what VMware is, you can Google it. But essentially, VMware is a host system for hosting virtual machines or virtual servers. And what you can do is you can spin up computers, desktop operating systems, server operating systems in this VMware tool or software. So if I'm a criminal hacker or I'm anybody and I have access to a VMware system, I can go on there and I can, there was an exploit that was actually recently patched because VMware recognized that somebody was able to do things with their system that, somebody with not the right credentials should be able to do, but there was an exploit on top of the SolarWinds backdoor that allowed criminal hackers to then spin up basically their own computer on a company's VMware environment. So if you think about it this way, somebody was able to walk into a company's building and plug their laptop into the network and start using their laptop to hack and get further access to the network by using a computer. And there's a lot of problems with this. The main problem is that the IT people, the security people, have no visibility or control over this new device that just showed up on their network. So that makes it really difficult to prevent things from happening when you don't have control of a specific device. And the other thing too is that now you have this rogue device on your network that can do whatever it wants, and the attacker can use this computer. And the way that this gets deployed, it goes undetected unless essentially somebody's going in and checking the VMware configuration to see if no devices have been spun up recently. So that's the gist of what is going on. There's a lot of companies that have been affected by this. Obviously, SolarWinds came out and said it could be potentially up to 18,000 companies affected, and they kind of dubbed it like only 18,000. Well, 18,000 is a lot of companies. We already know that government emails have been stolen and read and stolen, and we're going to find out more in the coming months as to how far and wide this entire hack went. So there's other content out there, my 3 other videos about this, and there's plenty of other content out there that this is well covered, this hack. Usually cyber attacks and ransomware are not well covered, so I don't want to beat kind of a dead horse here talking about the SolarWinds hack over and over, because that's not the only thing going on in the world, and I'm gonna kind of bring some attention to some other things that need attention brought to them besides just this SolarWinds hack, because if you look at the news, you would think that this is the only thing going on in the hacking world, and that's just not the case. So that's kind of where we're at today. Intel, NVIDIA, Cisco, VMware is a platform that's being used frequently in these attacks, allowing attackers to spin up their own computers or put their own computers on what are supposed to be controlled networks. And then when you enable people to do things like this, you really don't have a controlled network anymore. And really, it all boils down to the SolarWinds being the on-ramp to allowing all these things to happen, because the VMware stuff would not happen if the SolarWinds backdoor was not in place. So it all goes hand in hand, but it all goes back to SolarWinds, and it's a pretty big deal, as we already know. So anybody has any questions, comments, or anything, they want to know more about the SolarWinds hack, or they heard something and they want us to kind of talk about it or verify it or explain what it means, drop it in the comments below. Otherwise, that's all I'm going to talk about this particular hack for at least this video until there's new developments and I have something more concrete to give you. So moving right along, a couple other things I want to talk about today. We are just seeing a massive amount of ransomware attacks out there, folks. We are seeing them all over the country. And as I always say, with these hacks, especially with the double extortion that's been going on for the last 8 or 9 months. And if you don't know what double extortion is, check out one of my other videos in the Guess Who Got Hacked and Breached This Week video series that I do. Those videos highlight double extortion quite often, and I talk about double extortion a lot in my other videos. And essentially, there's a lot of double extortion going on. There's a lot of ransomware going on. And the double extortion requires data to be stolen out of the network. And that's one of the common things I talk about and bring up all the time on this channel, is that we really don't know what was stolen and when it was stolen and how it was stolen until a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months down the road. And that's playing out in attack after attack after attack. I recently talked about an attack on Baltimore, Maryland school district, and we're starting to see massive amounts of data that was stolen out of the Baltimore County School District ransomware attack, where they initially came out and said that we don't think that much data or anything of that importance was stolen. And there are other attacks that happened in the last 2 months or so where the same exact situation is playing out. They're finding out that way more information than they originally thought was stolen, and that's simply because it takes a while to figure this stuff out. And for anybody to come out quickly after a ransomware attack and say that nothing was stolen or we don't believe much data is stolen, I advise you to take pause on going out with a statement like that too early on, because it leads people to a false sense of security, which is not fair, because these are unsuspecting victims who now might have to deal with their identity being stolen or worse. So as Baltimore County is figuring out that they have a bunch of pissed off teachers because their teacher information, data, personal information was stolen as a result of this attack. And we're starting to see Social Security numbers and pay information show up on the dark web from this attack. So, Baltimore County, Baltimore, Maryland, that whole area, they've been hit a lot with ransomware. It's prudent just to, release the information about the attack, but don't go too far and speak, out of school in terms of what you think may have been stolen and what you think hasn't been stolen, especially within the first month. There's no way you can conduct a forensic investigation quick enough to know within 30 days that certain data has been stolen. And as time goes on, these hackers usually slowly release more data, more information. They up the ransom number as the days move on, and that's the name of the game. And just to kind of piggyback on my VMware kind of discussion from the SolarWinds hack, Sophos Sophos comes out and says hackers use System BC and ransomware as a service attacks. And essentially, what they're saying here in this article, and I'm not going to go too deep into it because it is a little technical, but they're basically saying is that they're getting control of networks at a level where they can deploy their own tools. And that's not good. You shouldn't be able to, even if a hacker gets on your network, you should have things layered enough to where they can't deploy their own tools. They're able to do things like, run a tool that connects to Tor that anonymizes where their command and control server is, which is absolutely insane if you think about it. There's no way a device should be able to connect to a network that easily, especially on a network that's fairly locked down. If you're giving if hackers can get in the door or get to a window into your network, and then they're pretty much, once they're in, they can pretty much do whatever they want, you really need to rethink your cybersecurity strategy. It's not about protecting the perimeter. It's about protecting the data and the information, and that needs to be behind many, many layers of protection before somebody can, use not only your data but your network to kind of do these things. Like the article goes on to say, you can deploy this through PowerShell, through bat files and commands and scripts like that. Quite frankly, unless you're a trained IT administrator, you shouldn't have PowerShell running on a system. You can disable that stuff so it's not running on a system, and the only way it can be running is if a technician with the proper authority goes in and unlocks it and turns it on and maybe uses it for whatever task they need to do, and then immediately when they're done, it completely gets turned back off. When you don't analyze your network and look at things at this level, this is the kind of stuff that can happen. Hackers get in there and then they use the tools and stuff that are already on your network and at their disposal to further their attacks. And something like PowerShell is enabled by default on all Windows computers. But here's the cool thing. You can disable it, and you should disable it. Why have PowerShell just sitting there waiting to be used by somebody for malicious purposes when you can just turn it off? And you need special rights to turn it back on. There's ways you can do that. So this is just the kind of stuff that people need to start looking at. You need to evaluate your networks and how you're doing things, and making sure that you're not putting something in place that is making it easy for somebody who might gain unauthorized access to your network. You don't want to make it easy for them to further their attack because you're quite frankly just being lazy about your network and your network security. So, or ignorant because you just don't know. But in today's day and age, there's a lot of tools. There's a lot of things you can do. Disabling PowerShell isn't even a tool. It's something you can do within Windows. And if you have the right security set up, you're going to make it very difficult for somebody who doesn't have the right authorization to turn that thing back on. So moving on, we got a transit company, big favorite target of criminal attackers these days, along with schools, municipal governments, and obviously hospitals. They seem to be the top three. I'm going to take a wild guess and say trucking companies, transportation companies are a target simply because of lack security. Easy target, easy to get through. But Forward Air, Nashville-based trucking company, they were hit with a cyber attack. Ransomware was the attack. They're recovering from it. This happened about 3-4 days ago. And we don't hear about this other than this is from a website called FreightWaves or American Shipper. This isn't on CNN. Nobody's talking about this. This is the kind of stuff that happens every single day in this country to small and medium-sized businesses that never, ever, ever make the news. And, going back to GMBC, a hospital, was on December 18th. A hospital was crippled by ransomware attack. This is in Townsend, Maryland. GMBC remains in the grips of a ransomware attack on the hospital's IT system. A GBMC nurse who spoke to WJZ on conditions of anonymity said the past 2 weeks set the staff back decades. Everything's on paper. This comes after a ransomware attack in early December. The fax machine just started printing out hundreds of papers saying, you've been attacked, you've been attacked, you've been attacked. So think about this. Hackers got control of this hospital's network to the point where they could print things out on the fax machines. They identified fax machines on the network, and they printed it out on the fax machines, you've been attacked. So, the article goes on to say, we're working day and night according with our well-planned processes and procedures to restore systems to be fully functional once again. That was 2 weeks ago that this started. So, this isn't, you're not seeing this in the news. Maybe you're seeing it locally in Townsend, but you're not seeing that another hospital, along with a few others, have been attacked in the same week as the SolarWinds, because SolarWinds' attack has taken all the news, but it's happening all over the place. FBI has now warned that ransomware gangs are harassing victims via telephone calls to pay crypto ransom. So you get ransomware. And this doesn't even have to be on your business. This could be on your home network. People at home on their home computers get ransomware as well. Files, pictures of your family, of your kids get encrypted, and you're presented with a ransomware demand, just the same way that these businesses are. Typically, they only hit one computer. Maybe they'll hit multiple computers on your home network. Drop a comment below. Have you been hit personally with ransomware? Did they hit more than one computer? Was it just one computer? Typically, I've only heard about personal ransomware attacks hitting like one computer or one laptop and not multiple computers and laptops. But here you go. You have the FBI coming out. When the FBI comes out with a warning, usually we see an uptick in whatever I'm about to talk about right now. And, we are hearing that these ransomware people are calling the CEOs of companies when they get hit with ransomware. Maybe they're in that phase of figuring out, what am I going to do, and they're not paying, or they're trying to figure out how they can get around not paying. In the meantime, their phone is blowing up left and right with spoofed phone numbers that they can't stop from calling their cell phone or their business line. And it's basically a hacker or somebody working on behalf of the hacker who's saying, hey, we know your files are locked. We are the hacking group. We are going to harass you like a debt collector and bother you until you pay what we're asking you to pay. And this is a new twist in how the ransomware's going down. Before, they may have put a message on your computer and maybe emailed you, and that's as far as it went. And now it's going even further, where they're harassing you with annoying phone calls and blowing your phone up all the time when you get hit with ransomware. So just goes to show you that this stuff is developing and ever changing. And we go into two articles here that I'm going to wrap up with. Cost of ransomware attacks double. This is Beasley. This is an insurance group. This is on an insurance website. And the total cost of ransomware payments by Beasley PLC clients doubled year over year through the first 6 months of 2020 as the severity of ransomware attacks increased, the specialist insurer said in a report on Wednesday. This was written December 16th, 2020. So this was last Wednesday. So here's the deal, guys. The insurance companies are paying out like crazy. And as I say in this channel, we only know about 10% of the hacks that happen. 90% of them go completely unreported. But I can guarantee you 90% of them don't not file a claim against their insurance company if they have cyber insurance. These insurance companies are paying out insane amount of money, which, I've already expressed my feelings about insurance company paying ransoms and how I feel like it empowers and emboldens these hacking groups and these cyber criminals more than it does prevent it. That's why you're starting to see laws being presented by not only state but federal elected officials and lawmakers who are saying that if you pay the ransom, you could be in trouble. I think that's going to broaden, and instead of it being, well, you could be, right now it's basically you could be in trouble if you pay a sanctioned entity, which these hacking groups in Russia are certainly one of those sanctioned entities. But if they're not a sanctioned entity or you don't specifically know who they are, then you really can't get in trouble. I think that's going to change over the next year, especially in light of the SolarWinds hack and the fact that all these government entities have been affected, and this is going to be on the radar of a lot of politicians, and they're going to feel like they need to do something, a reactionary move to all of this, and I guarantee you there's going to be language that really restricts who and how you can pay ransomware demands. I don't expect it to be, first, second quarter of 2021, but don't expect it to go much further past the end of 2021 into 2022 before we start seeing at least state laws. And I would venture to say that we're going to see some federal laws pretty quickly here once the lawmakers get wind of everything that went down in the SolarWinds attack. And then jumping into more cyber insurance talk, cyber insurers scale back as ransomware attacks rise. Now, this is interesting. Right now you can buy cyber insurance. Part of your cyber insurance includes ransomware coverage and ransomware payments and cleanup from a ransomware attack. We're starting to see insurers say, well, we don't really want to cover this anymore. And it could go back to the fact that, it doesn't align with their core values or their mission. And, they see the issue with paying the ransom demand. So why even make it part of something that you would cover as part of an insurance policy? If A, you could be potentially breaking the law by doing so, or B, you're just making the problem worse by doing it. You kind of look at this, you think about insurance, right? And this is my perspective. If you're driving down the road and you hit somebody and you're at fault, you don't get paid by the insurance company. The person you hit gets paid, and they're obviously, made whole by the situation. If there's no damage to your car, there's no need for the insurance company to even give you any money or pay for your damages. If there's obviously damage to your car, you're going to get it fixed under insurance unless it doesn't meet your deductible. But look at this situation where there's only one victim or there's only one injured party, and that's the party that got hit, and the car that did the hitting, had no damage to it, or there was nothing to pay out. And this is a similar situation where you got criminal hackers hitting businesses, and the ones that have to pay are the insurance company and the one that got hit, not the person who actually caused the problem. They get off scot-free, they walk away, they don't have to worry. And no other insurance product is that the case. Usually there's somebody that the insurance company can go after to recoup these damages. The insurance companies cannot go after criminal hackers to recoup these damages. And if anyone thinks that maybe in 5 years they'll get a group and they'll be able to recoup their money when they get caught, good luck. Chances are they're never going to catch these guys. And the only way that this is going to end is by better cybersecurity practices and making this a business that is not absolutely insanely lucrative to the people who are carrying it out, more so than people that own casinos at this point, because it's so easy to make money by deploying ransomware on a business that needs to keep their doors open, so they don't open themselves up to things like lawsuits and breach of contracts and things like that. So these criminal hackers know what they're doing, and they know what they're doing to these businesses and what they're putting them up against when they deploy these ransomwares. So real quick, just going into this article, I'm going to wrap it up as we're going into 30 minutes. The total cost of ransomware payments doubled year over year. That came from the Beasley story that I wrote, or that I talked about. And then ransomware attacks typically involve the infection of computers with malicious software, often downloaded by clicking on seemingly innocuous links in emails or other website pop-ups, leaving users locked out of their systems with the demand of a ransom to be paid for the computer to restore proper functions. It goes on to say that, they just, everybody's paying more money. Rates have went up. Small businesses have been squeezed. If you can even get cyber insurance, because a lot of these companies and underwriters are evaluating whether you do cybersecurity well enough, and if you're not, you're not even getting a policy. And then price increases of 15, 25, 50% I've seen in some industries. He also said there have been much bigger jumps in rates in certain sectors, including public entities and education. Well, why is that? Because I talk about on this channel constantly, K through 12 schools and municipal governments getting hit like crazy because they suck at cybersecurity, or the companies that they're working with aren't doing cybersecurity. They just hired somebody to fix the computers all the time, and they never thought about cybersecurity. And now criminal hackers know this, and they're going after these entities to try to make their money. That's where we're at today, folks. Ransomware being deployed like crazy. Insurance companies paying out ransomware demands like crazy, to the point where they think they're going to give up even the business of cyber insurance or ransomware payments. Hospitals being hit, schools being hit, data being stolen. Everything that I talk about on this channel is happening, even more so on a more frequent basis. You can watch my videos all the way back to, I don't know, August, September, and I talk about this stuff every single week. Everything that I've talked about on this video are things that I have either talked about or foreshadowed against in the last 3-4 months. So there's a plethora of information on this channel about everything that I went into high-level talks through these different articles. You can find more detailed information in other videos that I have on this channel. So I highly encourage you to check out our other videos and watch and get information through them. I don't talk about everything in one video. It's almost impossible. As you can see, I've rambled on for a half hour here, but if you stuck with us to this point, you've reached the end of my video, and I thank you, and I hope that you are a subscriber to our channel. If not, you should subscribe. You obviously like what we're saying here and what we're doing, and look forward to bringing you more updates on the SolarWinds hack, as well as other ransomware attacks and other breaches that happen to other businesses besides SolarWinds and all the people that were affected by that particular. It was a big hack, so don't get me wrong. It was the biggest hack that we've probably ever seen so far, but it doesn't minimize the fact that there are other ransomware attacks happening multiple times a day to small businesses, and it never makes the news. Sometimes it doesn't even get reported by the business itself, but they're out there, they're happening. We know about it. Those businesses are calling our company for help. We know that they're out there. We know that it's going on. So stay vigilant, get proper cybersecurity in place, and we'll talk to you all probably next week. I'm going to probably take a few days off here for the holidays, so everyone enjoy their holidays. If you celebrate Hanukkah, I hope you had a happy Hanukkah. If you celebrate Christmas, I'm wishing you all a Merry Christmas. And if you don't support any of those two and celebrate either of those, whatever you celebrate, I wish you the best and have a great rest of 2020. And we'll look forward to 2021. We'll hit a few more videos between now and then, and I look forward to bringing you the content. So take care, folks. We'll see you all soon. Take care.